But Nigeria is definitely, to me, as far as I know, uh, it's the best market to be in Africa for sure.
Yeah.
It's a very dynamic market. Nigerians are very business oriented, very entrepreneurial. I love that ecosystem. I mean, of course, it has its challenge, but overall, I love that ecosystem.
Great. So one of the things I wanted to touch on is funding. So how do you go about getting funding for your venture in Africa? A lot of people have ideas, but access to capital is like one of the major problems that they face. How did you go about raising capital, and what advice would you give people who were planning on starting their ventures and raising capital?
Well, I mean, I started the capital raising started with competition and grants. That's how I targeted capital. Initially, I built this business with my own money for the first year. The first development and all was paid through, the sale of my previous business. But what I prefer doing is sharing what not to do, or the things you need to do to raise money. Because if you look at, it's a game. Raising capital is a game. It's a strategy game. And if you don't understand the strategy game, you're going to fail. And you're going to fail in a lot of ways. Raising capital is about networking. When I'm talking about VCs, angel investors, and all. Now, unfortunately, in Africa, we still don't have a funding ecosystem developed the way the States is. I don't know about Europe, but the States have a lot of ways to raise capital. But in Africa, most capital raising, especially for tech companies, VCs. You have grant potential if you have a social impact formula within your company, but usually it's VCs, angel investors, and that's a game of networking. Unfortunately, there's not enough capital available for the amount of businesses out there. But if you look at the companies doing business in Africa that raise the most money, they have very specific criteria and structure that people need to pay attention to. Number one, most of them have a structure, a group structure outside of Africa, whether it's in Europe or in America or somewhere that investors feel comfortable putting money in. One of the things I learned about investors is they don't trust Africa in general, and they don't trust African entrepreneurs in general. I'm not trying to make it's 100% the case, but it's been the majority of the case.
What do you think that is? Not to cut you off, but what do you think that is? They don't trust African entrepreneurs in Africa.
I mean, I've pitched to investors in Europe, man, in Amsterdam. Most of them never even been to Africa. So they base their African expertise on TV, the news, and we all know how that narrative is negative and not positive because we don't even control that narrative. I remember pitching to a group of investors and telling them the problem of charging, and they couldn't believe this. They said, "What? Well, we don't have. You guys don't have electricity? Like, it's like." And it's not their fault, they're ignorant. They don't know about the situation. They never travel. And I always tell investors never travel. Please spend some time. And then you have other investors that think Africa is just a jungle and all that. But that's besides the point. I mean, you see a growth in investment, but it's still not enough for the need on the ground. I mean, the whole continent last year, they say the whole continent, the tech space raised $1 billion. $1 billion. That's what a medium-sized company do in the States. I mean, and we're talking about a whole continent, doing that. So, and I'm shocked every time people feel excited about that number. It's nothing, man. Yeah. But those are the things. So you have to be very strategic on your fundraising. The other thing I would say is you need to find a fund manager, somebody who's well connected. If you don't have the connection, find a fund manager and work out a success fee with that fund manager that can help you raise capital. Because as I said, raising capital is about who you know. It's about having the network, tapping into the network. Because you have to think a VC gets hundreds, some of them gets thousands of applications on a weekly or monthly basis. They don't go through all that. But if you go through the door where you're introduced by somebody they know, that already that's a 50% win already, because you were introduced by somebody they trust, so they're going to value and pay attention and listen to what you have to say. So that's the way the game is. But I'm very optimistic of the future, because now I'm seeing like a platform like crowd investing. I think that's going to be the game changer. I don't think VC is the way to go anymore. I think we need to incorporate technology to democratize access to funding.
Awesome. So who do you see making those kind of investments in Africa? Are they like Africans that are like, are those investors that are local? Are they those in the diaspora? Like, who do you see making those kind of investments in African startups?
Man, I don't. Again, we
Who's
have
making
zero
taking that $1 billion investment?
Well, for us, we have zero African investors. Unfortunately, I tried. It just our business did not just it did not appeal to them, which is fine. But it just, again, we don't value technology yet like the West does, or the Asia. Also, Asia is way ahead. We still, most of the African entrepreneur I spoke to, and I'm sure it's changing also, because I've been back for 7 years now, so I see the conversation changing slowly. But in the early days, I remember one telling me straight up, say, Henry, come back with a project of building a hotel or an apartment and all, then I'll get you funding. All right. But this thing of social, helping the poor and all those things, there's no money. I mean, straight up, that's what the guy told me. So you have to understand, we still have that mentality of physical business. Digital and all is still far-fetched for a lot of investors. Now you see some angel investors trying to make moves, but it's still very, very little compared to what it's needed, and what's required. So to me, and unfortunately, that's the reality. I only target international investors that understand this type of business we're in, but most importantly, they're willing to go to look at the long term. They're long-term investors, because technology is a long-term game. I don't care what people say, and that's the problem also with local investors. They want their money back in 6 months to a year. In technology, that's not going to happen. If you're not invested for 5 to 10 years, don't get into tech. It's just that simple.